Hey, it's Cassandra Dell,
And Dr. Kayoll Gyan,
and you're tuned into the Stage Home Podcast, a place where you can check out from the weight of your everyday worry.
and check in for joy, hopefully some laughs, and skills to do life better to help you center your well being.
Welcome, everybody.
Man, we are finally here, Cassandra.
We are here to go. So, this project, this idea has been a long time coming for the both of us. We've both walked different seasons and continue to in our lives, but we are centered and grounded in this project we are kicking off today, right now.
I know, I'm excited. I feel like this is something we've talked about for so long, whether or not we do it, the nervousness that comes with with doing something so public with such a personal experience. But I'm excited and nervous, but excited more to see where this takes us.
Absolutely. So, I was talking to a friend about this experience, and it was interesting that I don't know what we'll ultimately name the episode, but she was like, and I'm going to use profanity for the sake of this, for the children in the back of the cars that might be listening. But she was like, this is a big ass rip the band aid and go. Right. So she's like, maybe that captures the attention of everybody. But it is. It's such a private thing, and we are choosing to be vulnerable and step into courage in hopes that this will add value to anyone listening.
So we're both breast cancer survivors, and it's always the first big band-aid. Who do you tell? When do you tell people about this? Even in that early stage of it, there's several band-aids that need to be ripped off at different stages, right? And so I guess since we're both at the point where we've finished active treatment and we're now in survivorship, it's another band-aid in the sense of, okay, how do we share our story and do it in a way that is honest and compassionate, but also like real and hopeful, and doesn't necessarily focus so much on the negative aspect of a cancer diagnosis and all of that. Like we know that's hard, obviously. What bits of hope or truth or joy can we pull from what we went through? And I think that's what we're trying to accomplish here with this. So
We're just going to kick off and really just start telling the audience who we are. I'll take the mic. Precluding this whole episode, I wanted to ask myself, like, who is, right? Who is
yeah, I
Cassandra
think
Dell,
that's a
the
good
step
question.
house?
Let's start with who is Cassandra Dell?
Who's Cassandra Dell? So I am first a Haitian American. Probably think that first. Shout out to my people. Okay, so we qualified after 50 years. This is very timely. This head wrap is the closest thing I had to red, but shout out to the Haitian team qualifying for the World Cup after 50 years. I am a Haitian American. I'm excited about that. I am a mother and a wife, a mother of two. I am a curious person. I would always say charismatic in how I approach. So I can be high energy, but I'm also very introverted. By profession, studied engineering, but I am in marketing right now as a product manager. And then the things I like to do for fun, I love to play in makeup, in skincare. I love group exercise classes. As of late, there are small projects I'm trying to pick up that I feel like are pieces of me, like knitting, but that's been hard to get to. I love just being active, and I also enjoy mentoring young women, being in a sorority. I enjoy the space of creating community and networking in a way that is genuine, that collectively helps us get better, like us getting, as I would say, greater together. So I love being in spaces like that, and anything that is for the progress and bringing light and enhancement to our cultures and our community. I am absolutely here for it. So that's enough about me.
I love that, and I think that, oh man, first you're an engineer, and then all this community things that you like. I think like it's so diverse, having so many different lanes that we occupy at the same time. So How about me? Okay, so I am how would I describe myself? So, first, I am a child of God. I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. I am Jamaican. At this point, we didn't qualify for the World Cup, but still, Jamaica to the world. Let's go. Right now, I'm living in Massachusetts, in Boston, but from Brooklyn, New York. Grew up there as well. I'm a mother. I have two boys, a wife as well, and I am a person that likes exploring. I like trying new things. Although I think as I've gotten older, I've kind of shifted away from those things that I like and kind of focus more so on things that I have to do, like work, children, family type of thing. So I'm trying to get back to being trying different things to find out again what do I like, and how can I fit that into my busy schedule because it's not always about work. There's more to life than just what you need to do for a paycheck. So, and I'm hoping that this podcast is one of that space for me to explore into that different identities again. But I'm a big sports fan. I love sports. Basketball is like my favorite thing in the world. I always tell Frank that if I didn't do this, I would love to be like a sports journalist or an athlete of some sort, just around the game of basketball, interviewing athletes, talking about, their work ethic, how do they become great at what they do, and just all the details of that. So I really am a big sports fan.
I love that. I love that for you. And you know what? You tapped into something that was so important, right? When you become a mom, which I think is a role that, although we've held for such a short period of a time in our lives, it's something that holds precedence, not only in time, but finances, how we occupy space. It's a title and a position that we have that maybe takes us sometimes from the creative and leisure parts of our lives. But we'll be talking about that, I think, as we grow and develop in this space. So the elephant in the room, the band-aid, let's just tear it up, okay?
Tell us about your cancer experience, Cassandra. Like, when were you diagnosed? How did you find out? How did that affect you? Like, your treatment experience. I know I'm asking like 10 questions right now, but pick from any and start wherever you want.
So it is, I'm not going to even shy away from saying the word, right? Cancer. So it is something that you never expect to happen to yourself, particularly when it just was not even a whisper in my family at all, right? It is something that I saw out there. And so it was October of last year. So I'll take a step back, September. Um, felt a I'm going to call it an invader in my breast. And I said to myself, okay, that's awfully weird that it was there and out of nowhere, right? I said, okay, don't panic. It's probably just a cyst or some sort of benign thing. Just do your due diligence and head to your OBGYN. Went there, walked that path. And, there's a lot of waiting. It's not just, hey, we go and we'll have your results in T minus 2 days.
Yes. Oh man.
It's it's imaging, and then there's also the actual biopsy to do the pathology report. So I say all of that for those who do understand that walk. Did imaging, the perimeter looked atypical, right? Not encapsulated as one would imagine. Let me not get too medical because the bioengineering is kicking in. And long story short, I was diagnosed in October of last year. Oddly enough, that is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Didn't waste any time. Met with the physicians, oncologists, the team, and they said, we want to make sure we squash this and we eradicate this from your entire body. We want to get started. You have to make big decisions like, am I good with the two children that I have? Because this can affect other things in my body or the future of that. Didn't want to waste time because I want to be here, healthy, alive, and well for me and my family. So started treatment in November and underwent that until March of 2025, of which it was like, yeah, congratulations. you're through the chemo round and now you have to prepare for surgery.
Yeah.
And then after I went for surgery, I was an in between candidate actually for radiation. But knowing me, it's all or nothing. I said, go ahead and burn those cells out. And so we also decided on radiation as well. So I went the whole nine of walking chemotherapy, going through surgery, doing radiation, expeditiously moving myself forward now, dealing with, you know, up and down side effects of everything from fatigue to brain fog to physical changes, as we are both aware of. It's a new you. And so right now I am walking the line of oral treatment and doing my best to strengthen myself and not just physically, but also mentally. I know I said a lot there. I don't want the episode to be too long, first round, because I know we'll continue to unravel that as we open up this platform to ourselves
Yeah.
and other
You
people.
did say something that I wanna ask about.
Yeah.
You mentioned, like, the waiting part. Like, people don't realize how long it can take before finding something until you actually get a definite, diagnosis or detailed information on not only is it cancer, but what kind and what stage and what are the receptors on it. And I think, that was it's very surprising. And at least for me, it was scary too, right? Because it's like, well, what do you mean you gotta wait for this test of results to come in, you know? Yeah, but that part of what you said stood out because I don't think that people realize how long it can take before finding something until actually, like, starting treatment. So how long was that for you?
Gosh, that's such a good question. I want to say from the time of first finding the mass itself, like me identifying it and going to the OBGYN versus the first day of treatment, there was at least 7 weeks. I believe that was 7 weeks in between. I might be, I'll call it 6 to 8 weeks, but I remember it being mid September, going in 24 hours to my OBGYN, and then not starting treatment until I think it was November the 14th.
And at that point when they found out that, okay, this was cancer, at that stage, did they have the information with the type, like the stage and all of that?
We had already determined, for those who are in this journey or know about the language, HER2 negative, HER2 positive, triple negative, triple positive. There's an array of receptors, sorry, that are involved in understanding, I'll say, the personality that a cancer takes in one's body. So by then, they had known all that information. I even went through something that's called oncotype. So all of that information was determined prior to the oncology team. The doctors said, okay, this is where we are. You're going to be fine. This is what we have as a start date. And you are processing information in such a rapid rate because one, you're trying to understand terms that you never thought would be applied to you.
Yeah.
And then also trying to take in, this is happening to me. This is not the wrong patient. I am the
Mhm.
patient.
That's so true because even for me, I remember, like, it just felt so surreal. I kept using that word because I just could not believe that I was sitting, like, on that side of the table or that yeah, that, like, it was happening to me. Because so it's like you have to be present and aware of what the situation is asking of you, the detail, you have to acknowledge this, you have to make decisions, but at the same time, you're also dealing with the shock of, like, actually being in that situation in the first place. So, yeah, I totally had that feeling too.
Yeah. I mean, before we flip this to you, right? Like, I remember the day I was actually home, right? And my husband, oddly enough, I think he had stopped in for lunch and decided to just lay down. We had maybe, I don't know if we traveled the weekend before. I'm just trying to recall why he was home. And I get this alert on my phone like, oh, your results are in. I'm like, results. Okay. And I'm thinking because the doctor hasn't called me, right? Let me just go check my results. And they actually ended up apologizing in hindsight, but I had read the information on my own. right? It was not a call from the doctor's office. It was me reading my chart thinking, oh, yeah, benign, right? If you don't hear from us, this is good news. Well, I hadn't heard from them and I went to go check my chart and I'm looking at the terms, right? Carcinoma, right? You see that word, I'm like crushed as I'm reading it. Like I'm almost looking for the it is not, right? It is not that. But I allowed myself to take it in and sobbed, sobbed like, how, right? I think really one of the most visceral experiences that you can have, especially with something like that, is how is this happening to me? Number one, why is it happening to me? Two, and is there anything that I did to cause it? I think it was just as the tears were pouring out, it's like, holy crap. So that was that was the first few moments.
You mentioned about being in the doctor's office before you started chemo and that conversation about having more children, fertility. What was that like? How did they ask you the question, and what were you thinking to kind of come to terms with a decision in that moment, or did it take you a few days?
Great question. So for many people or people who may not know, going through chemotherapy treatment can affect your ovaries and your ability to produce, right? Because of the toxicity of the medication. I think mentally, a seesaw of gratitude that I had had my children, but also like, how dare this come in and tell me that my second child may be my last one,
Yeah,
like,
like
how
making
dare
that
it?
decision for
Yeah.
you.
How dare
Yeah,
you just like cut the road, so to speak, like, just cut the cord essentially in having the audacity to intervene in my life and say, well, if you wanted to have more, that may not be the case for you, at least for not right now. So I felt like it was just disrespectful, like just invasive.
hmm,
And I think how the way that that feels like an ultimatum, like you're at the point of no return, I felt robbed, right? I'm like, why my body could not just go through the cyclical expectation of, yeah, you're in your 50s or close to your 60s and your body kind of just, right, goes through
naturally.
perimenopause. Why can I
Yeah,
not walk this natural route?
yeah.
But life had other plans in that moment. So it was a combination of grief, but also trying to put the thing that was most urgent as important, which is my life and being here for the two children that I do have.
Did you make the decision in that during the visit, or did you go home and talk to your husband about it, or how was that decision made?
I feel like I had made the decision there. It was not like absolute per se, but I was like, okay, look, while a third would be lovely, I just was on the path of not delaying treatment, not allowing this thing to create another cell to extend into my body. So while I allowed myself to grieve it, I almost knew immediately that I was not going to go the egg preservation route and said, let's just move forward. Should life choose to, for me to be in my 40s and have a child, great. But right now, let's walk in life with our two.
Yeah.
It was pretty instant. Yeah. So, I mean, you've posed really good questions, and I want to make sure I respect your time and give you the same, platform or space to share that. So, walk us through the initial days of the diagnosis.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed in well, no, I realized something was wrong in June 2021. So I was just going in for my annual physical with my primary care doctor. And she was doing the breast exam. And so she felt my right breast, having a conversation at the same time, and then she feels my left breast. And then she was like, "Huh, did I feel this before?" And then I put my hand on my breast and I was like, no, like, wow, this is new. I didn't realize this was there. And she finished her breast exam. And then, of course, you think cancer, at least for me, cancer, but in my mind, I'm like, no. So she was like, yeah, this is probably just like a cyst. And so she sent me to get a sonogram. At the end said that, well, it doesn't necessarily look like anything serious, but they couldn't really tell. So in like 3 months to come back for a follow up to see if something changed. So within the 3 months, I went off because it's the summertime, and I'm just like, I got plans, right? I'm not gonna let this stop my plans. So I went off, and I had planned to go to North Carolina, to Nashville, North Carolina with a wedding for a wedding, Nashville to visit my friend Steph, and then Texas. So I was planning to hit up a lot of places, and it was my first time traveling with with the boys. At the time, they were like 2 and 4 at the time. So, I was nervous preparing for that, my first flight and solo travel with them. And so I went and I did all of that, but in the meantime, I was still like, feeling my breast to kind of notice if there was any changes. And, sometimes I was like, "Man, does this feel the same?" But I just wasn't quite sure. But then when September came, which was actually the 3-month mark, I realized, and I was actually in a job interview, and during the interview, it was a Friday, and I was like, "Man, my breast hurts." And I was like, "No, doesn't feel right." And I remember it because we were going to New York that weekend for a wedding, and it was also our wedding anniversary too. So I said, "Okay, when I come back on that Monday, I'm gonna call and make an appointment." And so I did that, and then I went back to the person that did the sonogram, and I was like, no, I called my PCP, and I said, "I feel like the lump is getting bigger." And so she scheduled me for, a follow-up. So I went back and they did more scans. That's when they did a mammogram at their, breast oncology unit. Then they did a biopsy as well. And so it was during that time where I was kind of waiting, okay, what's happening? And so, one day I was in Lowe's trying to get a fence because a storm had come and blown my fence down. And so I was online, and then I saw my phone ring. And so I went outside in the parking lot. Frank was in the car, and I picked up the call. And I guess, the way that I looked, it's like Frank must have seen me from the car because he came out and met me. And so I put the phone on speaker, and then the doctor said, "Okay, that the test results show that it is cancer." My heart sank. We went to the car and we drove home. I didn't get my fence that day. Leaving that, we went home, and then I went to the bathroom, and I just started crying because I'm just like, I can't believe this. Like, what? And then Frank came and met me, and he started crying too. And then after a few minutes, we was like, you know what? If God brought us to this, he'll bring us through it. And after that, like, my disposition changed, and I was just like, okay, like, if this is, the road that I have to go down, I'm gonna do it, do whatever I have to do. And so I was still waiting. I was being treated at this one hospital that was connected to my PCP, and at this time, I was still waiting to find out any more details. And like 1 week went by, like 2 weeks went by, and going into the third week, I was like, "No, this is taking too long. Nobody's calling me with any more information." And so I did my postdoc at, a place in Boston. I don't know how detailed we're supposed to be here, but, I emailed my mentor, and I was like, "Listen, I just got this news that I'm diagnosed with, breast cancer, and, should I contact this person?" Who was actually the person that interviewed me for my job. And he was like, yes, he was actually gonna say, "You need to contact her." And so put me on like a three-way email with her. Then she responded, dropped him off, and then set me up in tell me what I need to do in prep for my first appointment with her. And so, she said I need to get my scans on a CD, um, and request, like, everything be transferred to the new hospital where I would be treated. And within a couple days, I was in her office. I had everything that I needed. I think, but that was I think by that Wednesday, I was at at the, hospital where I would be treated for the breast cancer. And you mentioned a surreal experience. It was just surreal, navigating, making decisions for yourself, but then also navigating the shock that you are actually going through this, like, you are a patient now, and that this cancer got past your defense, you know? And I was writing in my journal that this thing got past my defense without even sounding an alarm that something was wrong, but it was just growing and taking up space in my body. And that's how I felt. I was like, "How?" You know? Like, did my body tell me messages that I didn't listen to? Like, was I just so focused with work that I ignored the messages that it was trying to tell me? Yeah, and so all of that came across my mind.
I mean, you're nailing, even as you speak your words, like they stick, right? Because the feeling is so mutual. Like, how dare this just come in without me noticing? Could I have caught it sooner, right? So that it was just maybe a quick removal and you didn't have to walk the line of treatment. So you hit on things. And what really also captured what I'm capturing from you just sharing your perspective is how life is just going, right? Like, hi, by the way, I'm at Lowe's, right? And never mind the role of still having to parent, right? Still having to show up at work while you're waiting and doing so. And you don't look, right? You don't look like a patient.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
I hold space for that. But yes, continue. Like,
and at
um,
that point, I was 33 years old. As you had mentioned before, no one in my family had breast cancer or cancer. Like, we just that word just wasn't even part of it. It was hypertension, cholesterol, I wouldn't even say obesity, like, we didn't even have any of that, um, and in my work as a nurse scientist, I should say that. So my work, um, is looking at, health promotion, right? And, part of my work focused a lot on cervical cancer prevention, and the role of culture in people's health decision making. And then another part of my work, my research looks at the role of religion and spirituality as resources to cope with a cancer diagnosis. And I study usually primarily racial and ethnic minority populations, Black African Americans, and so it's I was in this space of cancer prevention, of the treatment experience, doing this research, and I still never thought it would be me, because I just didn't have the risk factors that I knew to be associated with cancer. And not only that, so I had 2 boys, had my children at the time, and I breastfed both of them for at least 15 months, that so all of that together, I'm
you
just like,
checked off all
"How?"
the things. You
I
checked off,
did all the things,
right.
exactly, and I wasn't, like, overweight, or anything like that, so I was always kind of active. Yes, it slowed down the past few years with children and work, but it just didn't make sense to me. And then I also did the genetic test to see if I had a genetic predisposition for breast cancer, and it was negative as well. So things just didn't add up. But regardless of things not adding up, my present situation said that this was found in my body. And so I needed to fight it, right? And so I ended up having chemotherapy as well, then surgery, and then radiation, 25 rounds of radiation.
Yeah. So walk us through, even from the moment, right, of running those tests. Now you're having to sort of switch areas of care, right? How long did it take from that initial, okay, this is a diagnosis, to actually starting treatment?
I heard the word cancer. I first heard the word cancer like the beginning of September. And it was my PCP who actually was the one who told me the test results. So the people from the breast oncology clinic didn't call me. I didn't hear any contact from them. And that was my first red flag. I was like, huh, really? But she was always she was very supportive and reaching out, call me if you need anything. And, so she was very responsive, which I really appreciated. But not hearing back from the breast oncology clinic where I was doing my scans and all of that, it just wasn't a good start to me. Knowing where I worked and that the care was what was provided to the patients there, I just didn't like that this just wasn't starting at the right way for me. So that was the reason why I switched where I was being treated. I started chemo in October. So I guess in all, let's say a month or and a half or so in between. Yeah. So
Yeah. So it's almost the same timeline, like that 6 to
yeah.
8 week,
And
um
maybe the time frame was fine, like, maybe nothing was delayed, but the fact that I went 3 months from doing the biopsy to them not telling me they don't know, to then me finding out that it's cancer, and I'm just like, "Well," I felt like maybe that was my mistake. I should have told them, "Yes, go ahead and do a biopsy there, right then and there, so that in July, so that I know for certain." But I just wasn't thinking of anything, and then with them saying it didn't look like cancer or anything, like, I kinda just relied on the good news, you know? And, maybe that was my fault, you know?
yeah, no, I mean, I think when you're walking a path when you don't know what you don't know, right? And you're leaning on professionals who see this in every shape or form every day for guidance, right? I would imagine, especially if something looked atypical or irregular, that more oftentimes than not, the patient should be addressed. So I completely understand, like, gosh, could I have done it differently? Could I have reacted differently? When it's interesting because when you say end of August, right, to October, right, which is where you started treatment, we almost walked the same path, right? Almost the same timing. And so I would argue that when you're in it, it feels long. It
It
feels
does.
for like
Yeah.
forever, right? Because you're like, one of the first questions I had was like, "Can you just like wrap this up and just do the surgery? Who needs to walk that path of like going through all this treatment?" But I actually want to also pose you the same question of children, right? Because we both have two kids. What was your initial thought around having to make a decision around that?
Yeah, so I had that conversation with my oncologist, and she said, you know, "Of course, you can t take pull out your eggs, do the fertility, preservation, but that would add, I think, maybe another 3 to 6 weeks to the time before starting chemo because that's something else that also needs to be scheduled, and you have to do things in prep for the way to harvest the eggs, and as I mentioned, yes, we already had 2 boys at the time, um, and I wanted a 3rd child. Like, I had been playing with the idea of it, and around the time when I was diagnosed was the time where I would have started trying to get pregnant for the 3rd child. And so I also felt robbed in the sense that here's, you know, this whole cancer experience is now coming and potentially taking that away. And so I decided to go home and spend some and think about it. I didn't make the decision in the hospital. But that night, when I was thinking about it, you know, my husband, he said, it's my decision, whatever. Cause he's like, I'm fine with two. I'm good. But it was me that more so wanted, you know, to have a third. I just envisioned three, you know? And and so that was hard for me. It was hard, and I came to realize that it was something that I actually grieved. I had to take time to grieve not having a 3rd child or more, you know? And, but that night when I got home, I was just looking at my children. I was like, "You know what? I need to" while the idea of more children sounds good, makes me happy, I need to make sure that I do everything possible that I can to be here for the children that I already have, that God has already given me. And so that night I called the office and said, I'm not doing the preservation process. I'm not going through that. I want to start as quickly as possible. And then I think that was like a Wednesday or Thursday Thursday that I called. And so we ended up starting chemo the next week, got me on schedule, and then went from there. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so interesting, right? The stories sound so similar, right? I was, for those that will discover, right? Kayoll obviously has walked the path prior to me, But when we had the chance to connect along my treatment journey, I was almost amazed at how similar the experiences were, right? Two kids, mothers, in terms of pathology, very similar, and lines of treatment, very similar. We've walked a battle that we didn't think we would have, right? We were presented a challenge in life that we didn't see coming, right? And I know we'll probably quickly shift into what does this mean for us now, right? So all of this has transpired. How is this, if at all, shifted your identity in any way? Can you speak on that? What this challenge has done?
That's such a good question. And I kind of wrestle with that question because one, as a Christian, as a believer, I never want to dwell on something that is negative, right? That seems as if I am and that I am focusing all my attention on something that doesn't give me hope or doesn't speak life into me. And so I did wrestle a lot with, do I want to talk about breast cancer? Do I want to talk about cancer? You know, is me doing that focusing more on the negative rather than the positive? You know, and am I reflecting on, and if I do speak about it, is the way that I speak about it like honoring my experience and the revelations that I received from going through this experience, from God. And is the light that I'm shining on it on the cancer itself and all the toll that it had on my body physically and all the negative things associated with it? Or can I talk about it in a way that gives people hope, let them know that that while there's a negative aspect of cancer, it can also be a thing that draws you closer to finding your purpose and your meaning in life. It can bring you a closer relationship with God, with your family, with friends, with a community. And so I always try to have that balance where I don't want to like glorify the cancer itself, but I want to talk about it in a from a lens that gives people hope. And so as yeah, who do I th- how do I define myself? I define myself as like I did before when I started, as a child of God, as a person that has overcome many challenges in life, including breast cancer, um, as a friend, a mother, a wife, and also as a person that wants to help others who may be going through breast cancer or any other struggle in this life, and if I can pull from my own experience of struggle through breast cancer to share little nuggets of what I learned with other people, that's now where I think I want the space I want to move into and and speak about it in that way rather than just defining myself as a person that had cancer. Because I do think that even saying I'm a breast cancer survivor, yes, I am. But I'm also more. I don't want that alone to be my identity. I don't know. Did that make sense? I'm
It
still
totally did.
processing this too.
And you know what? This, for the people listening, this really shows the rawness, right? The authenticness, the transparency, and the unraveling of it as it's almost like an online journal. I see it as, right. Um, similarly to you, I have walked this path and continue to, right. There's still doctor's appointments, right? There's still trying to find out what professional spaces look like. There's still, I want to go on vacation. There's still all of that, all of those things, right? And you have this thing that happens in the rear view mirror that like checks in and out, right? Sometimes it's closer, sometimes it's far in the rear view mirror. And I think just in terms of identity, spirituality and religion, was something that I was not really, I'll say, well practiced, right? In practice prior to treatment. But I found myself leaning on it, whether it be gospel, or just words of positivity throughout that journey. And I realize I'm going to be very honest in this sort of sharing. We often in society we often share once we have gotten through the battle or once the coast is clear.
True.
So I hold
Yes.
space for any person, male, female, children, elderly, anyone who is walking a diagnosis like this one or any challenge in life, because I recognize that when there is fear, we hold on, right? We gatekeep. We don't share that until the coast is clear or we get some sort of some sign that shows us I'm 50% through, right? This
Yeah,
is
like
going
there's
in
a
the right
finish line and you
direction.
can kind of
Yes.
see it.
Yes. So I know that in this space, we'll continue to unpack that, but I hold space for people because I recognize that I was not a patient that was wanting to share about this, right? I think post treatment and now in survivorship, I want to sort of breed words and create a space that lets people know that life does throw curveballs in many forms. For some people, it's a diagnosis like this one. For some people, it's miscarrying and having difficulty having children. But it's how we share as humans, how we hold space to share that information to help support someone going through that or people going through that. And also creating words of affirmation and encourage and hope to make us better. I mean, going back to identity, I've always been someone that's like a problem solver in people. And what I mean by that, like, I would see like the bad kid in school. I'm talking 6 years old and be like, what if someone like, what if I go talk to him? Right? They might bully me, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Or maybe they
but
just need a friend.
right. Or maybe they just, I literally, like, it was the natural empath in me said, but what if they need somebody to talk to? Or when somebody's having a really bad day and it shows in the workspace or even in public, right? I always say like, what happened, right? What led to that? So I want to hold a space here. I think how this connects to my identity is naturally wanting to be in conversation because I'm realizing that there's no quick answer. But creating spaces and places for people to feel like themselves, to be vulnerable, but be courageous, um, and trying to walk challenges. That's how this project, this Stage Hope podcast connects to my identity. I feel like it's making me more vulnerable by sharing, right? Because I've shared this with very little people up until this point. It's making me courageous and it's also helping me establish my values, make them more pronounced. And what I mean by that is like, what do you believe in? Right. And what is the noise that you're letting sort of occupy and take space? I was listening to Diary of a CEO. Shout out to Diary of a CEO and Stephen Bartlett. And Brene Brown was on there and she talked about courage. Courage is being vulnerable, but it's also believing in yourself and following your intuition and your gut as well as others. So I think this platform is allowing just that. It's allowing the parts of me that I hide or the parts of me where I say not yet, to let that unravel because I recognize,
Yes.
going through treatment, like you don't have a choice. You want to live. And so you met a battle that presented yourself, like you said, it was a interjection. And you said, okay, let's go. Right. I want to fight. I'm going to do what I need to do. And I'm trying to invite that same energy in other parts of my life, whether it be mommyhood or creative space, entrepreneurship, whatever form it takes for anyone, more on that in 2026 and beyond. Yeah.
I completely agree. You mentioned that for us, right? At least we could see a finish line. But for many diagnosed with cancer or with any other struggle, maybe there isn't a finish line, like people with mental illness. Maybe it's an ongoing thing that's it's just managing. Or for some it's terminal and there is the finish line is not the finish line is death, you know? Is there a way to still have bring hope to those conversations? And I think that that's just the reality of life. Often as Christians, you can forget that you think you do the right thing, right? You're a good person, or you go to church, you pray, you read your Bible, that nothing bad happens to you, should happen to you. But in reality, it's the opposite, that and this is my from my perspective as a believer in Christ, being a believer doesn't prevent you from going through struggle. It doesn't extricate you from that aspect of life and humanity. But what I learned is that it changes the way you go through the struggle. It changes how you cope with it or you view it or what you take from it. And I think that there in life, everybody is going to go through something. And for us, that something happened to be breast cancer. But for others, it's so many other things. But how in the midst of those struggles can we help or use this platform as a way to provide that light or hope or have those hard conversations together in a space that is hopefully safe and people find trusting, credible. And I think that's kind of my hope for this conversation. And I think this is a great start, starting with a little bit about our stories.
It's going to be one heck of a journey, I think, and it's going to unravel in ways I'm sure we can't anticipate. But our experiences have led to what is now the Stage Hope podcast. And what we hope for our listeners and the community at large that will be tapping into this is that we share a space that invites joy, that invites living life in spite of the challenges, that really talks about the nuance of the hard things in life, right? It's not all blue skies and sunny days. We navigate so many things as we even show up today to record this. So our hope, no pun intended, is that we bring laughter, we bring joy, we bring a sense of what it is to be human, that we share what it means to be resilient in spite of it, courageous, vulnerable, and all while just having fun. I think that is what makes life delicious, as I call it. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited.
All right, well, let's go.
Thanks for listening in and see you next time.
Bye bye.